and the subject is astronomy.
Astronomy. They didn't ask you about theology, but astronomy.
Well, he said, I want you to show from astronomy that God exists.
Wow.
And, you know, I'm not an astronomer, but I did have a lecture, a slide lecture with my graphics and the computer on astronomy. So I agreed, and he said, now, but there's one caveat. We have an astronomer in the astronomy department of the university. You will speak on why God exists, then he will speak on why God doesn't exist. And I thought a minute about that, and I knew that I was being set up. And I said, you know, I'm willing to do that on one condition. Since I am your guest, let your astronomer speak first. Let me speak second, you see. So he agreed. I got to the university that morning, and he met me at the door, and he said, now, there is a problem. And I thought he was going to cancel the lecture. I had no idea what the problem was. And he said, here's what the problem is. He said the astronomer had another appointment. He couldn't make it.
So he wasn't coming.
He wasn't coming. So I said, no problem. Give me 2 hours with the students. 1 hour to lecture and then another hour to answer questions. So I lectured during the first hour, and we talked about the heavens and the vastness of space and the evidence that God exists from design, the fact that where there is design, there must be a designer. Where there's creation, there must be a creator. And so we went over that evidence. At the end, I noted there was a section for the faculty, and one of the students kind of looked over at the faculty, and I knew he was prompted by some PhD faculty person that wanted to kind of tie me up.
So they were trying to set you up. This had all been arranged ahead of time.
For sure. And so one of the students stood up and he said, our famous, renowned Soviet astronaut, Yuri Gagarin, traveled into space. He didn't see God. Have you ever seen God?
Wow.
And you know, there are times in your life where the God that you believe in gives you an idea. And I knew it, so I knew what they were doing. So I said, you know, before I answer that question, I do have a question that I want to ask the faculty. And then I'll go to students' questions. And I said, faculty, let's leave God out of the question. Let's leave the Bible out. I'm a believer. You folk are not believers. But let's leave all that out. I just want to ask you one philosophical question. Of all the knowledge in the world, how much do your students have? Do they know 50% of all there is to know? Do they know 80% of all there is to know? You know, how much do they know?
These were some pretty bright students.
Extremely brilliant. And so I said, look, let me give you an example. Let's take the 16th Ming Dynasty of China. Can you give me, in order, the 17 emperors in the 16th Ming Dynasty?
Now, Pastor Mark, I can't name one of them. Not one of them.
I'd be hard-pressed as well, sure. Then I said, now, what about the caliphs of Saudi Arabia in the 7th century A.D.? Can you list for me, please, the first 15 caliphs in order, list who their wives were, who their children were. Of the 1,500 known languages in the world, how many do you speak? Do you speak 1,300 of those? If you had a test by the leading astrophysicist in the world, how much would you know? Can you recite for me now the chemical compounds in order, and then describe for me? And, you know, they saw where I was going. And I said, of all the knowledge in the world, say of all the books in the world, just printed this year, how many have you read?
Amazing.
Let's say that you know 50% of all there is to know. From an intellectual standpoint, professors, you're grading these students. Do they know 50% of all there is to know? They said no. Do they know 30% of all there is to know? No. Do they know 20% of all there is to know? No. I'm going to give your students the benefit of the doubt and say this is such a prestigious university that your students know 5% of all there is to know.